Welcome everyone to the Streakers podcast. We are the ones that got away. I am Mason Migliara. That is Patrick Previty. I hope everyone is having themselves a fantastic start to their week. For us, I guess it's the middle of the week. It's Wednesday. But yeah, we just started school back up. So yeah, Patrick, how's your classes gone so far? Probably had 2 days worth of it.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Syllabus week, always pretty easy. National championship game, coming back to school. Not a bad way to spend the first Monday
It's
of the
very true.
semester. So a lot of good football coming up too,
Yeah,
I'd
I
say
mean,
this week.
I guess we could kind of start off with that with the college football update. There's not much of an update. It's the season's over now. Michigan ended up winning, beating Washington. What was the score? 31-13?
34-13.
34-13. Okay. Yeah. Uh, as you said, the score definitely does not resemble how close that game really was. But from what I saw, I watched probably the last quarter of the game. It was pretty close all the way up until then. Michigan was really just pounding that run game, man. Uh, Cornum, that's his name, right?
Blake Corum.
Corum. Yeah, he was a monster on the ground. I mean, JJ McCarthy really didn't have much going on through the air, but it didn't matter because that Blake Corum guy, he was just going crazy. So,
Yeah,
what
and
were your
Don
thoughts?
and yeah, I was gonna say, and Donovan Edwards, he took a step back this year. He only had like 300 yards rushing, I believe, ish on the ground for the season. And he busted out, I thought, two long runs, maybe both for touchdowns. Can't really remember off the top of my head, but he played really well. But Washington just had no answer rushing. And then Michigan's defensive line just absolutely inserted themselves in the game. I
Yeah.
mean, they got after Penix. Penix had this one throw where he was trying to hit a guy across the middle, or like he was kind of crossing the middle of the field, and he threw the ball and ended up behind the other guy, and he like tried to dodge one of the defenders, and it just looked really bad just because he was trying not to take a hit because that Michigan D line had been swarming him all game, and he missed a pretty much a gimme across the middle. Penix could have played better. Um, he had two picks. One was a really good play by the defender, and then the other one was the dagger, the game sealer. So I'm not really going to fault him too much on those turnovers, but I think at the end of the day, those definitely made a difference. It was 10 points off of turnovers for the
It,
Wolverines.
yeah.
And the offense, truthfully, like they had those long runs in the first half, but they had nothing for like a good chunk of that game. That offense, now look, they could move the ball, they could run, but like they converted, I believe, one first down the entire game.
Hmm.
They I'd have to actually, I'll check that real quick, but like they were very bad on third down. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, did I say converted one first down? I meant converted one third down, but yeah, they converted one third down the entire game. And so if you force them into that situation, or maybe an obvious passing situation, Washington was able to get them off the field. And then also Michigan had kind of a blunder where they ran the ball on fourth down with 7 minutes to go, I believe, in the first half. And that was
Hmm.
like that gave Washington the ball back, and I believe Washington scored near the end of the half um, to like kind of totally switch momentum. Like it was 10-17 at halftime, but with Washington getting the ball back, there was a lot of momentum because Michigan had kind of gone cold for a minute there in that first half. Um, but I think my overall viewpoint was right. I thought Washington did hang on the field, but for the most part, they didn't hang with Michigan's D line. I felt like the O line and the run game and the physicality of Michigan took over, and Penix could only do so much. Um he missed a guy on fourth down really early in the game. That was probably pretty crucial. The guy was wide open. That would have been a house call. I mean, maybe this game is a little different and got out of hand late, but for the most part, it's what I thought it was going to be. And that Michigan just dominated in the areas that like they were more physical in, and that ended
Yeah.
up being the difference.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, uh, you already pretty much said it all, but for me, watching Michael Penix, it was just the he's had a great regular season, great game against Texas as well. But then going up against this outstanding Michigan team, I mean, it was just it was really difficult and it was hard to watching someone who had been a Heisman candidate all year and just end up kind of falling flat on his face a little bit. There were his O line didn't help him whatsoever. either. Like he was being rushed the entire game, and once your timing is off, then it's just like, you know, you're kind of shit out of luck there. So it is what it is. I think the better team did end up winning this game. Um, but I don't think this is anything for Penix or Washington to kind of hang their heads on. I think that they're just fine as a program. And I also think that Michael Penix, he probably lost a little bit of money with this game. It just kind of showed that like maybe he isn't that top quarterback that he was throughout the regular season, going up against a top team like Michigan. But yeah. So we'll have to see
I,
what all
de- I
happens.
I definitely agree. I definitely think Penix may have lost a little bit of money. I think he'll be a clear third.
Hmm.
Because in part because of this game. I mean, I don't know how much one game will change. He has such a great body of work, especially this season. Heisman finalist, all that good stuff. Like he was a very good player for Washington this year. I mean, they had the longest win streak after Georgia's was snapped against Alabama. They won 21 straight games or something like that. Penix was great. He'll be drafted in the first round. I think when I see him, he's 24 right now, or is he 23? I'd have to check. Um, he is one of the older a part of that older class of
Hmm.
player that's has been declaring as of late because of the extra year of COVID, or extra year of eligibility that COVID gave.
Hmm.
But he looked like an NFL quarterback. But I definitely think expectations are tempered now because you saw what like it could look like in the NFL. I hate to be so dramatic about one game, but there was definitely some points there, specifically like I mentioned, that one miss across the middle where he tried to not get hit. That scares me. That scares me. But they were after him the entire game. So some stock I'll put into it, but not too much. But
Oh,
another thing from this game that I was also really interested in was Jim Harbaugh's entire legacy now at Michigan is cemented. I believe he's got a 43-3 record or a 40-3 record against Big Ten teams. Hasn't lost to Ohio State in the last handful of years. That was his big thing. And then now he's had 3 straight playoff appearances, and now he's won a national title. There's a lot going around, especially with the coaches getting fired. Um, as of late in the NFL about him coming back. Um, what do you think about that? A lot of people think it's kind of the next challenge, or he's returning to the NFL because there's work still to be done.
it's been a long time since he's been in the NFL, and the NFL has changed since he's been gone. I think that he's better off just staying at Michigan. I think that's where he's going to be most successful. And with everything that kind of happened this year, I think he has to kind of right that wrong, if you know what I mean. Um, there's been plenty of conversation that, the 3 game suspension wasn't enough, and that was just a very minor penalty for everything that they kind of went through. Uh, so I think that he should go back to Michigan and stay there. I think what the contract that was on the table was like 10 years or something. I have no idea what the money was for Michigan, but I mean, could he get better money in the NFL? I'm sure. And if he was to go to a team like, let's say, the Chargers, I know that's one team that you think that he would probably go to. That would be the only one that he would go to, I think you were saying. So, but in my opinion, I think he should stay at Michigan. He's been super successful there. Not that he wasn't successful in the NFL, but I think that this is just more his zone. Let his brother do the stuff in the NFL with the Ravens.
Yeah, I think he's definitely shown that he could be one of the greatest college football coaches of all time, in all honesty, just because of the way that he has coached at other programs prior to prior to going to the 49ers.
Hmm.
He coached a lot of good programs. I believe Stanford, and I can't remember exactly who it was prior to that. I know that he coached another team and kind of turn them around. I think as far as a legacy standpoint, yeah, the suspension and like the ongoing investigation might like draw him back in for a little bit more unfinished business, but I don't think so. I think this year has just been so dominant. I mean, they continued their dominance after everything happened, after firing the staffer, all of that. Um, hoopla that occurred. I mean, they were good before and they were good after, and they took care of business. So I think he is content at a certain extent with what he has done at Michigan. Now, like you said, it is definitely the Chargers for me. That would be the only move. The NFL can match the money. It used to not really be like that. I almost felt like it used to be the college coaches were going to just get a bag. They were just going to get a heinous amount of money, a terrible amount of power, and they had all the things that they could control at their fingertips within that college town. And they were kind of like mayor of the town a little bit. It's still like that, except now the NFL can give you a ton of money and or match the money because the coaching market is just like that. And that's depending on who you are. And Harbaugh would get that money. And if you have a quarterback in this league, you'll win. We just saw a 6-time Super Bowl winning head coach Bill Belichick just have a terrible last game against the Jets, which
Mhm.
they won, I believe. But uh, you hate to see it. If you don't have a quarterback, you can't succeed. So I don't see any of the other openings, which we'll get into, uh, being enticing at all. I would stay at Michigan until I saw an opening that was something like the Chargers. I think this year it's just the Chargers. I wouldn't want to go to the Titans, Commanders, or the Falcons. There's too much unknown there. I mean, well, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to be paired with a franchise quarterback?
Yeah, no, it makes sense to just go to a franchise quarterback guy that, and the only one really that there is would be uh Herbert out in LA. So, but I guess we can move into those coaches that were fired. We'll start with Arthur Smith. This one to me, eh, I don't know. He's been 7-10 the last 3 years. Like that's not winning football. Granted, he hasn't had a quarterback. He had Desmond Ritter, Heineke this past year. Then the year before it was Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ritter. And then who was it for his first year? Was that like Matt Ryan's last year in Atlanta? Maybe.
But
I'm not
he
sure.
may have been in Indianapolis by that point.
Yeah, he might have been. So who even knows who his quarterback was? So I don't know. I guess it's just time for a new voice out there in Atlanta. He is a quirky guy and everything. So
Yeah, I think maybe that would have had something to do with it. The kind of quirks, like he's probably not the most popular individual as far as just like fan favorite, or we're gonna get behind this coach. They spent a lot of money on the defense this year. They did invest, and I think when you look at some of the weapons that they have, uh, for the most part, you might think that this offense should be more creative or more explosive or something should pop out. Um, but it doesn't really do that. And I think maybe there's a little bit of frustration with Kyle Pitts. You don't know what's going on with that. So I think for the most part, it may have been time for a new voice. I would just say that I wasn't surprised. I just was a little disappointed considering I saw a coach who I felt had potential. Um, but once again, when you don't have a quarterback, they truly did not have a quarterback this year. They were in the thick of a playoff race for a good chunk of this season. I know the NFC South is terrible, record-wise, especially, but they were in the thick of it the entire year, and they were literally switching quarterbacks week by week
yep,
towards the end. And I think you have to tip your cap to any head coach when that is happening in today's NFL because that's usually a death sentence. That's the only stuff that happens to teams that end up in the top 5 draft picks where they're switching
mhm,
quarterbacks every other game. So I
yeah,
think I have to tip my cap to that. But yeah, 3 straight 7-10 seasons, you're gonna get booted nowadays.
yeah. I guess what's going to be enticing about that job? Like they don't really have like a great draft pick because they were in the thick of it. I guess they went 7-10 or probably somewhere around 11, 12 area in the draft at this point. And then you got Robinson, you got Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Like you got some good weapons on the offensive side, but it's just finding that quarterback. And could it be Penix? Like, is that the kind of area that he would be at? I don't know.
Maybe.
And
I don't know if he would fall to that. They have the number 8th overall pick.
oh,
Uh,
okay, they have
in
eighth.
the draft. So that's not too bad. That
Yeah,
might be right where you need to be to trade up. I don't know if Penix
yep,
is going to go past. So these quarterbacks go off the board so quickly, and so much
mhm,
changes between now and the combine and then the draft. But
yep,
I could definitely see them. They have enough pieces where they could possibly move up. They would have
yeah,
to give up something, but I could see that. That could be
yeah,
what's enticing about the job. Also, I feel like they're not really all that. They're not like poorly run. The
mhm,
Commanders have new ownership and everything. So they're not in the badly run
no,
realm. But some of the other jobs that are opening up are kind of
yeah,
yeah, they're not exactly the greatest ones, specifically
I
like the Panthers one or even the
no,
Chargers.
yeah, Panthers. I guess we can go there. We already kind of talked about it because this happened in the regular season with Frank Reich being gone. You have a second year. quarterback in Bryce Young. Overall, just a really, really not great team. Adam Thielen, I saw a post on X a couple days ago. He kind of elaborated on what his thought process was, and he was like, I came here to be like a veteran voice, and hopefully we could have gotten like a playoff spot, but I don't know what he was thinking with that. Like, come on, dude, you know that you weren't getting a playoff spot. And now he's like, I'm not getting any younger. It's kind of like Super Bowl or bust for me. So he could be someone that's going to get traded this offseason for uh, maybe draft asset, something like that. So I don't know. That job out there in Carolina is going to be. It, Carolina's got a long way to go. I think they're in for about 5, 6 years of a rebuild. I think because
Yeah,
they're not going to get a top coach. It's not going to happen. They're going to get some first year guy, and it's going to take a couple years for him to get acclimated to being a NFL head coach and all that stuff. So I just don't see anything really positive coming out of Carolina for the next couple of years.
I would say the most important thing with this, with hiring somebody right now, is how they interview about Bryce Young. Like, look, I don't know if they're in a position because they don't have their number one overall pick. The Bears have it. If they're in a position to give up on Bryce Young just yet. And I think it's important to get an offensive guy, and maybe you try to swing for the fences and get like the hottest new coach who might be, up for jobs next year or the year after, and you say we're going to try to get him early. You know, I think it's important that they get a coach that buys into Bryce Young. I think Frank Reich it turns out he was probably right. CJ Stroud is looking like the man. He's a rookie quarterback in the playoffs. That's almost unheard of for the most part. And and I think and he was right, but at the end of the day, you can't just keep saying that you were right and the other person was wrong, especially in hindsight,
Yeah.
and not invest in Bryce Young. So I think it's important that they get a coach that likes Bryce Young as a quarterback, because
Hmm.
for the most part, this organization that would provide stability. This organization is not stable right now. They
Yeah.
could enter a very long rebuild. I mean, didn't their owner just throw a drink at somebody?
I was just about to say, yeah, their owner just doesn't. He is a whole crazy person in his own right. So they're not really in a good spot from the ownership side of things. So who knows how it would be on the field. So they're just a whole mess. That job is not going to be very enticing. Maybe a job that could be a little bit enticing would be either like the Titans or the Commanders job, because the Titans, you know, they're still young. I think Derrick Henry's going to be gone, but they're going to be a young team. So do you think they stick with Will Levis, or do they go and draft another quarterback? They're in a weird spot with that because like Will Levis isn't a top guy. He wasn't a top guy really even coming into the draft that he was in. What was it, last year, the year before? I think it
Yeah,
was just
last year.
so he wasn't like the top guy, but he's serviceable, I guess. Um, and then with the Commanders, you got Sam Howell. He showed out in some games, and then just down the stretch, that team just was not very good at all. Um, so do you think I'll ask another question as well. Is Ron Rivera done in the NFL, do you think?
I shoot. Would he go back and be a defensive coordinator? I think it might be. I think he's had health issues.
Hmm.
I don't know how like what his drive is right now as far as like family and life and football. Like I don't know enough about his situation, but I would say for the most part, I don't think he will get rehired in this coaching carousel. I don't think that will happen.
Yeah.
So then I think, is he going to have to wait, and how many years would he have to wait, and how many years would want to wait? I don't know if he would go back and be a D coordinator or what. So I think it might be it for him, period, in the NFL. I think maybe a broadcasting position or something might be next
There we
up.
go.
But I think for the most part, I don't really see it. But I think you made a good comparison though, to both of those teams. I think Will Levis, I think is going to get another shot for the year, and I think Sam Howell was on that way until this year just ended so poorly for that entire team. The Commanders look like they're going to be in the market for a free agent quarterback, and maybe the Titans are too.
Maybe.
But the Commanders are probably, along with maybe even the Steelers, the leaders to get like a Russell Wilson type of guy. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Kirk and the Vikings
Yep.
and what other moves those moves will trigger. But I think
Zach
both of them
Wilson.
are pretty decent jobs, huh?
I said Zach Wilson could be an option for any of them. It's kind of like a
I could see Zach Wilson. I mean, you just a change of scenery, period, and then
yeah,
maybe just sitting behind Will Levis or something like that. I mean, I know it
yeah.
sounds ridiculous, but you never know. I think both of those could be good. I'm a little bit surprised about Mike Vrabel getting fired. I believe they were 6-18 over the last 24 games or something like that. So that's poor that they were on a really bad streak. But I was still surprised because I always just felt like Mike Vrabel was a part of that turnaround. The Titans have been very good for the last 5 or 6 years. I feel like he was very much a part of that. I mean, he could the whole Vrabel to the Patriots to replace
Is
Belichick is
possible.
heating up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very possible. And then who knows what will happen with Belichick? That still has not been announced yet. Like there's nothing we're only speculating right now. Um,
I
but
think resign or I think a resignation might be.
yeah, yeah. I don't think that that would be a parting ways. I think it would be Belichick being like, "Yep, I'm going to resign from this head coach position," and then I could see him going out to LA and being with Justin Herbert, and that could just be a match made in heaven for all we know, or it could be a match made in hell. We have no idea. It could go either way, honestly. And then I guess we've already talked about McDaniels and Staley. We don't need to harp on Staley. I think you're just like, screw this guy.
I'm guessing he's gonna get another job somewhere, not as a head coach. He has to. He's too smart, too talented.
Yeah.
Maybe we see him again a handful of years later. This is a guy who I definitely could see going back to his coordinator position and coming back. I will say that because Todd Bowles got a second job in the NFL and that's a miracle in of itself. So if Todd Bowles can do it, Staley, I'm sure is
Yeah.
capable.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess we've kind of worked backwards here. Let's talk about week 18 and what kind of happened with some of the bigger highlights. Uh Jameis Winston with that late call, just absolutely putting the dagger into Arthur Smith and the Falcons, even though because they didn't make the playoffs. They were short because the Bucks won and then the Packers also won. So that kind of knocked them out. But Jameis Winston just taking on the chest and be like, "Yeah, nope, that was us. We did that. We just overruled what coach said. They were on the 1 yard line after a pick, and what would have been the difference if they would have scored on the pick? What's the difference from scoring on a little cube on a offensive play? Like, there's really not that much of a difference there. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Was it Bush League or was it just like,
Oh, I just thought I thought like it was weird. Like, because I do subscribe to the like, look, I would take my foot off the pedal at some point. And that late in the game when you're in victory formation, I definitely think is kind of cheap. I would say if you're gonna go for it, maybe just line up and do it. And almost just if you're gonna give the middle finger, man, stick it out. Don't
mm-hmm,
just hold it close to your body. But I think if I'm a Falcons fan, I'm probably, or maybe not a Falcons fan, but like a part of the Falcons, specifically like Arthur Smith. Look, he got fired on the bus. I mean, he was fired that day.
mm-hmm,
I'm okay with saying something to Dennis Allen, be like, what the hell's going on here, dude? Like, you called victory formation, then you ran a play to get your boy in the end zone. Like, what are we talking about? Like, come on, let's tighten up. Like, this game was
yeah,
over and like y'all didn't have to do all that.
yeah,
Um, Now, as far as Dennis Allen is concerned, it apparently obviously wasn't his call because James Winston called a little bit of an audible and everybody wanted to do it. I think that concerns me that that team is so willing to just not run the play.
yep,
I'm trying to think of truly how many like teams would have done that. And I think that that's disappointing for Jameis because I don't know if he would have gotten another NFL starting job, but like those things seem to come around every so often in your career. Like I definitely could see him getting another shot. I just think it's disappointing because he just directly goes against his coach
mm-hmm,
and does kind of start a lot of unnecessary media attention.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
and I think that really hurts.
I don't know if you saw what Ryan Tannehill said, but he was like, "Oh, I kind of knew about DeAndre Hopkins' incentives, and if they had called this play at this time, I would have said screw it, and I would have thrown it to you." Saying DeAndre Hopkins, he was like, "I have nothing to lose. I'm not coming back," and so that also just said that he's not going back to Tennessee. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I guess this is kind of along the same lines, but Jameis Winston has all of this like kind of negative media attention that he's had in his whole life ever since he was at Florida State. So it just kind of is like another thing on top of it. Whereas Ryan Tannehill, he's just like, oh, I'm looking out for my guy. I want him to get his money. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like your past makes it look a lot worse you know, than it might really be. But that is a very like negative thing to have where you just go against your coach and do something on your own. But moving on to the next thing, the Buffalo Bills did end up defeating the Miami Dolphins there in Miami on Sunday Night Football. That was a rough game to watch because honestly, the Dolphins were in control for a majority of that game, and then just that kick or that punt uh return touchdown, that was like that was heartbreaking. And then uh that last play for the Dolphins after Tyreek, I think he had gotten injured on a play before and he had came out of the lineup. And your number one was, I believe, Chase Claypool. And he runs this route and I don't know. He just ran the route too deep. And then Tua, what he does, he throws to spots. He doesn't throw to his receiver. He throws to a spot and he puts his wide receiver open. And Claypool just doesn't have that chemistry with him. And this comes off of last week or the week before, where he had a perfectly thrown ball right into his arms and he had two defenders on him, but the ball was thrown perfectly and he lands on the ground and he drops it. So now I'm just like, get this man out of here. I don't give a shit about Chase Claypool. He has screwed us now twice. Um, but anyone that kind of blames Tua for that, it's just like you don't understand, I don't think. And in the moment, I was upset and I was pissed. But I've kind of watched some of the film and I've looked at some more diehard Dolphin fans on Twitter, and they're all saying like, "Listen, it's not Tua. This was just a lack of chemistry between Tua and Claypool. And when there was no one else for him to throw to, I think it was like 4th and 13. That was the only receiver that he could have thrown the ball to, and that he makes that throw 10 out of 10 times, 100 out of 100 times. So it was just unfortunate. And congrats to the Bills for winning that, going down to Miami. Now we get to go up to absolutely freezing Kansas City, where Tua just does not play well in the cold. So it's a shitty time for a Dolphins fan for sure.
Yeah, and y'all may have been in a lose-lose situation because I don't think I've really ever seen this before. Maybe like once before, where like if a certain team won, they got a chance to go play another team like the Bills, like
Hmm.
the following week.
Yeah, and it would have been in the same position. It would have been at home. It would have. It just. It was unfortunate. I was not happy about it because that all stems from the Jaguars losing to the Titans. If the Jaguars didn't lose to the Titans, the Dolphins had a chance to knock the Bills out, and the Bills were playing for their lives. But that didn't end up happening because the Jaguars ended up losing. So the Bills were kind of just playing like, okay, we're in the playoffs, so it's just kind of, are we going to be at home or are we going to play here again? So it was kind of like for them, like whatever. But it should have been the same for the Dolphins, being like, yeah, whatever. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on the Jaguars losing their game and basically losing out on the playoffs?
Yeah, I definitely think next year now makes it like a make or break year. Unless like Trevor Lawrence did not take that leap that everybody thought, like
Mm,
dark horse MVP, like, but it had been like that for a while and he dealt with some pretty bad injuries like towards the end of the season last year. But for the most part, it was just inconsistency and just disappointment, especially against the division opponents that they had the entire year. So I think for the most part, Doug Peterson, one more year. They better make the playoffs and they need to win that division, I think.
yep.
Um, for them to bring him back. And then I think you start to really look at I think Trevor Lawrence is your guy still. But he needs to stay healthy and you need to surround him with a good offensive line and keep him safe. And you give him one more coach, I think, after that. That's thinking way out ahead. There was a lot of Trevor Lawrence slander. It's weird. Trevor Lawrence is getting like his like media like attention comes in spurts. At one point it's showered with media attention for his because he's good, and then another one is showering him with the bad. And it's probably his stock is a little bit lower than it was last year, last off season. Um, but I still think it's intact. I thought I was really disappointed, but I got to be honest, I wasn't surprised that they lost to the Titans.
Yeah, I
Like they
wasn't
had
either
this,
really.
they were in the same position last year where they almost lost. I mean, they barely pulled it off, and then they had a huge comeback against the Chargers. You start to think about last year a little differently after this entire season went down. You become more like, oh, maybe there was a little bit more of like that individual, week to week thing going on last year rather than this is indicative of how good this team is.
Hmm. Hmm. It was a very disappointing season, I think, and it just ended in probably the worst possible scenario where they don't even make the playoffs, let alone like they didn't win their division, but they couldn't even get into the playoffs. So, but the team that did make the playoffs because of this and that won their division was the Houston Texans, man. With that win over the Colts in Indianapolis. That was huge. CJ Stroud played great. Nico Collins had, I think, 9 catches, 120, 100, somewhere around there. I don't know. Well over 100 yards and a touchdown. What do you think the Texans kind of ceiling is? Do you think they can beat the Browns in this first round?
I think they can beat the Browns. I don't think that they will. Um,
Okay.
I think that the Browns are a very good football team. Amari Cooper, I believe, is a go for Saturday. Um, I just I just love what I'm seeing from the Browns right now. I think they're playing inspired football. Um they're going to be very excited. They're going to be on the road, though. So that's a plus for the Texans. That's good.
Yep.
At least they get a home playoff game. But I think for the most part, that defense is too good. And CJ Stroud is really good, but the playoffs are always a little bit different. There is a bit of a learning curve. And I just don't know if the Texans have enough to beat the Browns, which kind of just sounds absurd. The Texans and the Browns in the playoffs playing.
Yeah.
I will say next year, though, Texans are going to be a lot of people's hot pick because everybody's going to think that CJ Stroud's going to take that next step. And I think a lot of people are going to choose the Texans to make it as far as potentially the AFC Championship game. So
That's crazy. They're
you,
gonna have a tough schedule because they're a first place team. They're gonna have a very tough schedule.
I think if CJ Stroud can take that leap, I think for the most part that the rest of that team will just kind of follow suit. I mean, they got another year of draft picks, draft
Yep.
capital to try to help. I mean, they'll probably try to make some sort of splash in free agency. I think people will want to go play with CJ Stroud.
I would.
I believe that receiving core was banged up as the season went on. They can be healthy at the start of next year. I think the
Sure.
Texans are a good football team. I'm not like putting all my eggs in that basket for next year. Certainly not. I just know that they're going to be a lot of people's hot pick.
Yeah.
But I'm not picking them this week though. I got the Browns.
You got the Browns.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think Joe Flacco lives and sees another day.
yeah, Joe Flacco living to see another day and potentially going to play the Ravens. That would be a storyline of all storylines, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know who I'm going to go with yet. I haven't made that decision. I need to think about it a little bit longer. But a team that we will talk about real quick is your Buccaneers. They end up winning their division, and they took a nice little 9-0 victory over the Panthers. Poor Baker Mayfield. He was hurt pretty much that whole game. He was battling through that game. I don't know. Like his ribs were just not doing it for him. I think he was like limping off the field after every possession. But they were able to get themselves through, and they're going to be hosting the Eagles here this week on Monday. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they played the Eagles earlier this season, and that game was not close. I believe it was really rainy in that game, and I don't believe the Bucks put up any points. The only
Yeah.
thing that they have going for them right now is Baker gets an extra day of rest because they play on Monday
Yep.
night, and
Yep.
he just needs to be healthy. And the Eagles probably had worst case scenario happen this past week, where like Jalen Hurts gets an ugly dislocation on his middle finger on
Mm.
his throwing hand, um, and like two or three other players get hurt and they lose the game, and so they're not home. They go play the Bucks, and for
Yeah.
the most part, I think losing that game and the division is a real letdown. I think that they're coming in with zero momentum.
Hmm.
But with all that being said, I think that that's where it stops, and I think the Eagles will wake up and they'll come in and they'll beat the Bucks. But I will say my New Year's resolution was to not bet against the Bucks or not say that they're going to lose or not, you know,
It's been
doubt my
working though.
team.
It's been working for you. Every time you
Yeah,
go against them, they win.
yeah. So you're right. Every time I go against them, they win. That's funny. I just don't see it, man. I mean, we only were able to put up 9 points against the Panthers. That was rough. I think we don't have a strong enough run game to even really compete against the Eagles unless Mike Evans and Chris Godwin look sharp. And Mike Evans had a drop last week that was pretty crucial. We probably would have put up more points than 9. I mean, probably should have more points than 9.
Yeah.
But Antoine Winfield, maybe he's playing some inspired football. He saved that game against the Panthers. He tackled I forgot which receiver it was, very, very close to scoring down the left sideline, and obviously forced a fumble, and he fumbled out of bounds.
Mm,
So that was amazing. Well, the Bucks recovered it, and that saved the touchdown. So maybe he's playing some inspired football. Maybe he can make a couple plays, show everybody that he should have been the Pro Bowler.
yeah,
But
true.
I think for the most part, we just don't have enough firepower to really beat the Eagles. But if we had played maybe not the Cowboys, but who knows? Cowboys going on the road are, terrible.
Terrible.
But if we had played the Lions, I could have seen us beating the Lions or something like that. But
Interesting.
that was obviously a division winner. So I
Yeah,
would say maybe I could even see the Rams. I think the Rams are so up and down this year, even though they're playing well. I don't know how much I'm buying into the Rams, but
true, true.
I don't know. I think the Eagles are a tough draw, especially since we played them earlier. I still my heart says Bucks, but my brain says Eagles.
That's fair. Yeah, it would be really hard to go against the Eagles in this game, just with their, their playoff pedigree and everything that they went through last year, and just the Bucks are really not. They're what, 9-8, I think they finished. So I don't know. I feel you. Your heart says one thing, but your brain just is like, I don't think so. And you already mentioned the injuries there for Jalen Hurts. I actually didn't see it. I was out with some family before I had to come back home, so I didn't see what happened with him. But I did see what happened with Sam Laporta. Do we know what the injury ended up being? Was it just like a hyperextension, or did he tear something?
No, I believe he just hyperextended his knee.
Okay. It
Yeah.
looked pretty rough, and he had to be helped off. He had to be carted back to the locker room. Like that definitely sucked, and in a meaningless game for the most part. So, but that's the risk that you take with these types of games when you play your starters, and you just want to try and get everybody in, make sure there's no rust going into the playoffs and everything. So it's a catch-22, and we talked about it last time. Like you just never know what you're gonna. It's the risk that you take by playing these guys, and yeah. So I don't know. We shall see what happens, but I think the Lions will be just fine. Who are they playing? They're playing
The Rams.
the
I
Rams.
don't
Oh
know
yeah,
if they're going to be just fine. Actually, I know I said I'm not
really,
buying. I know I said I'm not buying into the Rams too much. I think that this is actually where it stops.
really.
Lions. Yeah, I think. You know what? We might as well just get straight into picking these games.
Yeah,
Honestly,
let's go. Let's do
yeah.
it.
I think. Yeah, I'm gonna take the Rams against the Lions.
Okay.
This feels like a terrible homecoming for Matt Stafford that he's got to play the Lions in their first playoff game in a while. And this is their best team in a while. I think this Lions team is probably even better than the Lions teams, any of the Lions teams, perhaps, that Matt Stafford was on. It sucks, but I think the Rams, like I said, it's been a roller coaster, but right now they're at the good part, and they're at the top of the roller coaster, the high part. And I don't really see them going down just yet. Um, I think they got too much. I think they just have too many weapons. They can throw the ball a lot. I think that this will be a shootout
Hmm.
type of game.
I think so too.
But I mean, give me Sean McVay. I mean, maybe Dan Campbell's gonna have to draw up some great fake punts, I think, for the
Really,
Lions to win. I mean, yeah, I think we'll have like one. I think we'll have one fake punt. I maybe book that. Okay. That's my lock of the week. Over half a fake
a
punt.
fake punt for the Lions. That
Yeah.
that would be crazy.
Yeah, at least one fake punt.
So you think that the Lions are going to go with that same like super aggressive mentality that they've had all season? I don't think that they should go with that. I think they should play it safe and they just take the points that are there for them. I don't think they need to keep going for it on fourth down in their own territory, unless obviously they're losing like late in the game. But like, don't risk it too early. Just just take what they're giving you, and I think that the Lions will end up winning this game. I really like this Lions team a lot. And you already made your pick for the Browns and the Texans. You said that the Browns are going to win. I'm probably going to go with the Texans. I like them at home. I like CJ Stroud. I know that Browns defense is outstanding, but I, I I don't know. I just don't know if Joe Flacco is going to be able to do it. I don't think he's going to be able to. It's just like that gut feeling. But was it against the Texans that Amari Cooper had that 200 plus yard game? or it might not have been. Or
Oh,
was that the Colts?
no, actually, it may have been, actually. I'd have
Was
to
it?
check.
I'm not 100%.
That'd be a great point. What a game to have that against.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
yeah, or what a team to have that against. That would,
Uh,
yeah, they played the Texans a few weeks ago. They won 36-22.
Uh-huh.
CJ Stroud did not play, but Davis Mills did play. He didn't play like garbage either. And yeah,
Mhm.
Amari Cooper set the franchise record for
Okay.
265 yards receiving.
Okay, so this
Can't
is a
win.
game without. So they already played, but it wasn't with
That game
CJ.
was not close, by the way. It was
No.
36-7 till the very end. And
Yeah.
then it ended up 36-22.
Hmm. I'm still gonna go with the Texans. I think that they're on a high right now, and I think they're gonna continue that momentum.
Sucks that
Um,
both those teams have to play each other in the first week because I
it
think a
does.
lot of people would love to see both those teams make a run, but
Yeah, for
may
sure.
the best man win.
We shall see. And then two teams that the Dolphins were expected to make this huge run, but who knows now what's going to happen in the Chiefs? You know, they were Super Bowl champs last year, so they're expected to go on a run as well. But they face off against each other in this wild card round. Obviously, no, I'm not going to go. Obviously, I don't know. I want to go with the Dolphins. I really, really do. If Raheem Mostert's back, if Jalen Waddle is back, I think that they have a really good shot. McDaniel just needs to. Do you know how many times they ran the ball in the second half of the game when they were winning? Do
I
you
don't
know?
believe it was a lot.
This is the number of times in the second half of the game that they ran the ball. Three times. When in the first half they had Achan and Jeff Wilson running for an average, I think, of like 5 to 6 yards per carry. And he just completely abandoned it and just kept throwing the ball. I don't understand. This is the thing that Mike McDaniel does. When he gets in the lead, you would expect them to run so they can run out the clock. No, he throws the ball because he thinks that we just got to get that nail in the coffin, that dagger, which I respect it, but when it doesn't work, I mean, this offense is still really good on the ground. That this line has been really good, even though they've gone through I think 12 different guys. So as long if the Dolphins run the ball and they give the ball to Raheem Mostert, who led the league in touchdowns, uh, or broke the record for the Dolphins with touchdowns, I think that they have a good shot. They were close in Germany. I know it's going to be absolutely freezing, but I think that we rely on the run game with how cold it's going to be. I think that's going to be the recipe for it. So if they run the ball, the Dolphins will win the game. I will stand on that if they run the ball enough. But if they
I
don't, if they
saw
start throwing, then Chiefs.
I saw a pretty bad stat the other day about just the Dolphins and their offensive success against some of these good teams. And I just think it
Yeah.
was too much. Too much of a sign for me to pick them, especially in the cold. But I will say, if they were home or if this was in a dome, I really, really do think I would pick the Dolphins.
Hmm.
But if it's since it's cold and I'm already doubting this team's offensive ability against good playoff teams, I can't go any further.
I don't blame you.
Unfortunately, I have to see it. And considering it's against the Super Bowl defending champions and Patrick Mahomes, that makes it even tougher. But I will say I totally see where you're coming from, and I could see the Dolphins winning this game.
Yeah.
Both of these teams were primed to make a run. Dolphins were primed to be the one seed at a certain point this year.
Yeah.
It's not like that right now. And I don't think that the Chiefs are peaking whatsoever.
Yeah.
But
It could go
I'm
either
going
way.
with the Chiefs. Yeah, I do think that this is truly a coin toss. I think this weather is a huge factor, though.
Hmm.
Way, way more of a wild card than maybe people are even saying. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be cold. This is going to be one of the coldest playoff games that we've had in the last handful of years.
Do you think a lot of people are going to buy Peacock to watch this game? Just random.
I no, I don't actually. No, I that's a great question. I don't. I think that this is a great game to put on Peacock. You're right for
Yeah.
this for the site. I think a lot of people are going to stream it, but you know what?
Yeah.
We'll have to see because everybody's all talk until the game rolls around and it's like 20 minutes before, and you're like, like why not? Hey, they got The Office. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mind.
Or it,
Um, it's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
it's kind of crazy how things are moving. The streaming services are kind of in a similar spot, but
Yeah. Yeah. Or you can just go to your local bar and probably they'll have it up on there for you. So we'll have to see
mhm.
what happens. I know that I have to watch this game, whether it's streaming it or going out to a bar. We'll have to see. But I'm very excited for it, but also extremely nervous because I just want the Dolphins to win it. playoff game, man. Um, and then on Sunday we got the Steelers and the Bills. We haven't really talked much about this game, or the teams involved with it. I think this is kind of a shoe-in for the Bills, especially with TJ Watt out on the Steelers side of things. I just don't see how the Steelers go into Buffalo and beat this team right now. I think this is the most obvious game of the playoffs this first week.
Yeah, we're in complete agreement. Maybe this game would be a lot closer if Russell Wilson was on the Pittsburgh Steelers, but that's not the case just yet. So I would take the Bills. I actually do think that this game could get ugly, if I'm being
Yeah,
completely honest. I don't know how the Steelers could possibly keep up unless the Bills play down to their competition, which has happened more than a handful of times this year. But
yeah,
that's the only thing I could see.
yeah. I fully agree. And is it Mason Rudolph that's going to start for them? It probably is, just because of how
Yeah,
things went towards the end of the season. Yeah.
yeah.
So, uh, yeah, we're in agreement there. Then the next game is going to be the Packers and the Cowboys. This is a very interesting game to me because the Packers, they've been pretty good this year. Shocking in my opinion. I didn't think they were going to be this good, but here they are in the playoffs. I think they're what, the 7 seed. Um, but I think that the Cowboys are going to win this game. I think Dak is going to show out. It's in Dallas, so eh, I think it's a lot for the Packers to overcome. But uh, props to them. So I have they're going to be my shout out here at the end. So I'll talk about that later. But what are your thoughts? Do you think Cowboys?
Yeah, I think the Cowboys are home, and I don't think anybody's going to beat them at home this year. At the very least, it won't be the Packers. Um, this Packers team is good. I think this is an accomplishment that they made the playoff. Jordan Love, you know what? Super impressive. When we did our division preview series, said that anybody could win that division, and that division was pretty competitive. It was a darn good division, outside of the Bears,
Hmm.
um, who I know they were disappointed that they weren't able to spoil the Packers season, but um, I think that the Cowboys are just too good. They're in a different spot. I think that at least McCarthy coming back might add some storylines and everything,
True.
or facing his old team. And I know the Packers with Aaron Rodgers had the Cowboys number for a few of those years, but I don't. It's a different era, different time. I think Dak Prescott, as long as he limits the turnovers, doesn't give this young team too many opportunities. I think for the most part, the Cowboys should be fine. This might be the second lock of the week, I'd say. The Cowboys.
Well, what about a third one with Monday night with the Bucks and the Eagles? I know did you already pick? You
I
kind of did.
said I said I gotta go with the Eagles because
Yeah,
that's what
you
my
did.
brain says.
Your brain says that, but your heart says, yeah.
My heart says Bucks.
Yeah, I have to go the same way. I think I already said it. The Eagles. It's just the more logical pick. As much as I want to go with the Bucks and Mr. Baker Mayfield, I just don't see that happening. I think it's too tough of a game for them to kind of overcome. Even though it's going to be in Tampa, I think that's a nice little benefit for them. But didn't the Eagles go down there earlier in the year and they beat them?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's already happened once this year. I
The
don't see
Eagles
it.
may have been the Eagles may have been at home that game, but nonetheless,
Mhm.
yeah, it still stands.
Yeah. So I guess we'll go into our shout outs here now. My shout out, I already talked about, going to be the Green Bay Packers. I think that they are the youngest team in NFL history to make it to the playoffs. So they also have zero Pro Bowlers, I believe. So props to them and Matt LaFleur for guiding them through this season, being the youngest playoff team in history, having no Pro Bowlers and still making it to the playoffs as a 7 seed. Like, props to you guys. That's really, really good. And let's see what they can do here in the playoffs. If they can pull off an upset against the Cowboys.
Yeah, and shout out Jair Alexander, the biggest Packers fan ever. I don't know if you saw that clip where he's behind the reporter and she
I
said
saw
like,
something.
yeah, she said he was like, oh, the Packers fans are out tonight or something like that. But yeah, great shout out. Also, correction, the Eagles did go down to beat the Bucks.
Mm,
They did go down to Tampa and beat the Bucks at home. So that is another sign that team is going to be really good. My shout out is again, I'm gonna have to harp on this. Draymond Green considered retirement after suspension from Warriors, but Adam Silver talked him out of that. Isn't that one
wow.
of the more crazy storylines that we have in the NBA? This whole like this whole Draymond Green scenario just continues to get worse. I honestly thought things were done when he got all those technicals, kicked Steven Adams in the balls, punched LeBron James in the balls. I thought we were done, man. I really truly thought that that would have been the turning point. That was 8 years ago almost. Like, oh, it was probably like seven and like what, 7 months or something like that, because that was right around the playoff time. We're getting up on 8 years ago that was, and now he's like, oh, like I can't assault people on the court. Well, I'm gonna retire. And Adam Silver talked about it. Of course, Adam Silver did. So he's got that magic touch. I don't know what's up, but that's our mention of the NBA. Ja Morant out with a torn labrum, I believe, for the rest
Yeah.
of the year. He's going to get surgery on that. That's super disappointing. As we were filming this, Kawhi Leonard signed an extension with
Oh,
the Clippers, unknown money and time, I believe, and they're working on Paul George's too. So that's pretty good. I think Kawhi Leonard will probably retire a Clipper. So that's interesting. A lot of fun stuff happening in the NBA for sure. Now, an update on us. We will have an episode where we calculate all of our picks and from the regular season and we declare a winner. We will have our quarterback list review and predictions, final predictions for the NFL awards. I believe we may have gone through some of them already, uh, vaguely, or we looked at them and we were like, I think we did that with the NBA and at a checkpoint, but I also thought we maybe discussed about MVP a little bit. But now
yeah.
that everything's been wrapped up, I know we talked Pro Bowl and stuff like that a few weeks ago because that was decided after week 17.
Hmm.
But now that week 18 is concluded, we're going to go through all of that, and that should be fun. That'll be its own episode. We'll do that at some
Yep.
point during the playoffs.
Yep.
And we'll see what happens with all that and how wrong we truly were in
Oof.
some of those
Yeah.
cases. Should
Not
be
very good.
interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess that's it. That's been this episode. I'm Patrick Previty. That's Mason Migliara. This is the Streakers podcast on Sports Social Network. We'll see you then.